Welcome, everybody, to our sound. Well, it's not really a sound for video session. That's usually over on the other channel. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the microphones and other gear and software, actually, that you might use for not only live streaming, but we're going to start with something that's a much more practical in today's world, which is doing remote music lessons or other types of remote types of one-on-one meetings. And so this is where we're going to start today. So thanks, everyone, for joining with us. Today we have two esteemed guests. First of all, we have Danny, and then we also have Emma. You can use your microphone, too. If you
Hi
want.
there.
Mine's just in an awkward place, so I'm trying to see everybody, but yeah.
You're good. Okay. So the reason that Danny and Emma are here are that they have some experience from a music standpoint that I think is going to be really helpful. Obviously, what I'm talking about is in today's world with coronavirus, COVID-19, a lot of us are staying home. Danny is actually a music teacher, an instructor. You teach what?
I teach violin and fiddle.
Okay, and where do you do that?
In the living room, upstairs.
Living room, yeah. Okay, so that can be a little bit tricky in today's world. So we're going to talk a little bit about doing that remotely and the various things we can use to make that work. So this is the most common question I have had in the last 2 weeks is, hey, Curtis, I have to do online either streaming or, lessons or something. Which microphone should I get? Which camera should I get? Which software do I need? So on and so forth. So that's what we're going to cover today. So first of all, let's go to Emma first. So have you ever done remote lessons of any sort?
When I was doing dance a long time ago, we did, because it was a commute to get to our studio, we did often just was it FaceTime?
Yes.
Yeah, FaceTime lessons so that we didn't have to drive as much from our dance floor in the basement. So we would just be streaming from the studio, and then our teachers could come over and watch our stream and see how we were doing. That's my experience. And then in the coming weeks, because my university's shut, I will be starting music lessons virtually as well.
Okay. So not technically shut, but everything's moved online.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So tell us a little bit, when you were doing the dance lessons, at least, let's talk about that experience first. What were the things that worked well? So you used FaceTime with an iPad,
Mm-hmm.
And we rigged it up. So we had a iPad holder. We put it on a photographic light stand.
Mm-hmm.
And what worked well about that?
The stand, because our dance floor it's like a box. You built it. It's a box covered with marley. So it's raised up a little bit. And so for a teacher to get a good sense of what you're doing and a good view, then it needs to be mounted on a stand. And I would say for anything that you're going to be teaching, like music or dance or some applied art, you do need to be able, as a teacher, to have a good view of what your students are doing. So I think the stand was important, both so that they could see me and so that I could see them without being on the floor. Yeah, it was very simple, very utilitarian.
Okay. And so I'm sure there's some things that didn't work that great about it. What were the challenges? What things didn't work so well?
There was always lag, and there always probably will be lag. I can't remember if I danced live to the music that they were playing in the studio that was coming over my speakers, or if we had music. I don't remember. But that's always going to be a challenge too, is when you're doing things that involve having a steady rhythm, either with the student, the teacher, or both, then you're going to have to decide where the music and the beat is going to come from and how you're going to transmit that, because I don't know that there's a way to do it without lag at all.
Yeah. So network latency is always a thing over the internet. It's always the challenge. Okay. What about the sound quality? So you were just using an iPad. How did that pan out? Did that ever get in the way?
I would say for dance, it wasn't too bad, just because you really only need the gist of the beat, honestly. This is going to be a challenge, though, for music lessons, because part of having a lesson is that your teacher should be able to interpret your musical nuance, and really be able to hear your sound in good quality. So that's where the microphones are going to come in.
Okay. All right. And so have any of those lessons started yet, or is that to come still?
That is still to come.
Okay.
My professor is not at home yet, so
okay,
that's a big obstacle there. Yeah.
He has to find a way back to his to here. Okay.
Yeah.
So So good. Okay, so Danny, let's talk to you a little bit. You have done remote teaching before.
Yes.
What was your setup for that?
I had an iPad, or I might have even used my phone. I don't actually remember now because it was several years ago, and my student had a phone. I would say spend some time during the first lesson or maybe have a pre-lesson setup session just to help the student get set up so that you can see them and they feel comfortable with how things are. Even if it's putting their phone on a stack of books or something so that, I mean, it doesn't have to be anything super fancy, but just so that you can see what they're doing and they can see what you're doing as well.
Okay. So I think the visuals are important. When you're teaching music, then you need to be able to show your instrument and what you're doing so you can teach the student what to do. The books are a great, I think, in a pinch solution, and they can work, but there's some downsides too, right? I mean, it seems like sometimes people prop things up and they fall over and...
Oh, right. So yeah, even if you have a spare music stand or a piano, if you're not taking a piano lesson, a piano that you could set the phone on. So yeah, some way of securing the device so obviously it's not going to fall down and break while you're trying to have your lesson.
Yeah. I think actually if you're going to invest in something that a mount for your phone or iPad or something you can put on a stand is probably a worthwhile investment, just so you can fine tune it and you don't have to worry about it falling. And I'm not necessarily advocating that everyone has to spend money on doing this stuff, but if you want to, if from a teacher's perspective, I think it probably makes sense to make that investment.
Yes, I think so too, and I think maybe a separate mic other than your device. But we're going to get into that.
Yeah. So. That'll come here in just a minute. Okay. All right. So then there's the issue of the service that you use to do the streaming. So what did you use for your lessons?
I used FaceTime. That was something that my student had and that I had. It was very easy. There was really no learning curve for that.
Okay.
Just call the other person and get started.
Okay. So I think that's an important factor for teaching lessons is you don't want to have to spend the first half of your 30 minutes or first 15 minutes of your hour, futzing around with technology, trying to get it to work. So that is an important consideration. Get something. I think in these cases, it probably makes sense to move a little bit. Don't move too fast. Don't go and invest in a camera, an audio interface, or preamplifier and a microphone and everything all at once. I would do it a step at a time and kind of test it out and figure out what's going to work for your situation.
I agree. And as far as the latency, I think I've actually been listening to some webinars and reading emails and things that in the music community that they have kind of provided. And there's some very interesting ideas just in terms of changing maybe one's perspective as a teacher. Okay, so we're not going to play duets together because of the latency with the internet connection. However, we can do things like call and response or play this after me. So you play a bar and then they repeat it back to you. It can be a really good listening experience that way.
Okay. So it almost changes kind of the what you actually do during the lesson. I don't know if that's a difference in pedagogy really, but maybe it is. I mean, you're not playing together.
It's definitely a different way to communicate what you're trying to get across.
Yeah.
And how you're trying to gauge the student's progress.
Okay. So I guess going in with realistic expectations about not probably going to be able to play together. But then there are some alternative ways to go about that.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So you were also, I'll go back to this camera. So you were also you went to a webinar today. It was put on by some musicians. Tell us about that.
It was really exciting. There were, I think, close to 2,700 people on that webinar, which, I mean, it was a challenge of itself because, that kind of stretches the connection. But it was really kind of exciting to have that many people on one, to be in an audience with that many people all around the world, learning about ways that we can kind of diversify the teaching and also adapt to the new circumstances of social distancing and remote learning and that kind of thing. So in this particular webinar, the piano teacher was from Australia and the two hosts were in different places in the U.S. and they gave a really, the piano instructor gave a really nice, concise summary of how it works and basically tried to reassure us to not freak out and not try to go all out all at once, but keep it simple and just start doing it.
Okay. And so the topic was specifically how to do remote lessons
Yes.
for music. Okay. All right, cool. And when you say there were some challenges with 2,700 people, what do you mean in practical terms?
The connection cut out a lot. I was having to push play on the screen a lot of times. However, it was also recorded, so we can go back and look at it again.
Okay. So yeah, I was in the other room and I could hear talking, and then every once in a while it would stop, and then I'd hear click.
A repeat, yes, of the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, so that is one of the potential challenges. So, incidentally, what software or what service were they using to do that webinar?
Oh, I don't remember the name of it, but it was not something I was familiar with. Crowdcast, maybe?
Crowdcast, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't Zoom, although we talked about Zoom a lot, but I think it was Crowdcast.
Okay. So, Emma, do you have any ideas yet when your professor does start the lessons, what you guys will be using, or is that still to be determined?
He has mentioned in his communications thus far that we will be using probably Skype or FaceTime. Most of our trumpet studio are Apple users. So for the sake of everybody just getting on board as soon as possible, because we had spring break, and then of course we're missed pretty much all of this week of potential lessons. So we're just trying to onboard really fast.
Okay.
So probably one of those two apps.
Okay. Very good. And so there are some others that we can talk about as well. Danny, you had mentioned one called Zoom.
Right.
And let me just kind of move over to the screen here so people can see this. Go ahead and tell us what you learned about Zoom so far today.
It is free. You can sign up for a free account. It will work for free as long as you have two people on the call. When you get more than two people, you have 40 minutes free on the free account version. There are ways to record while you're going. I think several apps do that. I think Skype does that, and even FaceTime. And there are ways to connect multiple cameras and splitting your screen and things like that. So there are some nice features for music teachers with that app. And actually, I myself take violin lessons, and I will have a Zoom lesson on Monday from my teacher. So I could report back.
Okay. All right. So it sounds, so you're going to have some firsthand experience with that on both sides. It sounds
Yes.
like, okay. So you're moving your students online as well.
Right.
And what's the plan there? What are you planning to use for that?
I'm communicating with each student and their family and seeing what platforms they have access to. I don't really want to make people download a bunch of stuff if they already have something that will work. So if one family's using FaceTime and another's using Skype, that's okay with me. I have both of those apps. So
Okay, cool. I actually put a comment up here on screen from Lloyd Puckett. Lloyd, thanks so much for joining us today. And I know Lloyd has a strong background in teaching music, I believe in particular percussion. But one thing that Lloyd says here is in terms of lessons, the student needs to play to a metronome of music on their side rather than the teacher providing the tempo by tapping or similar.
yeah.
And I see both of you guys nodding your heads. Tell us about
Yes.
I was,
Totally agree.
Yeah, I was thinking specifically in terms of dance. Sometimes it was hard to keep the tempo going if there was a skip in the Wi-Fi or the connection. So I would agree with that.
And we should mention these were percussive dance lessons. It was
Yeah.
Irish step dance, so the rhythm is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. So let's, we're going to go to, so Zoom is one option. Let's talk a little bit about Skype. Now, have either of you used Skype yet?
Yes.
You have?
Once when you did an
Okay,
experiment.
we did a test. I want to talk a little bit about Skype. Skype is a great service as well. You can do it for free, person-to-person calling, and I believe you can even do three-way calling if everyone's on the internet. You're not calling a landline or a mobile phone. It's pretty good. There are third-party apps. Actually, there's a built-in app, but there's also a third-party app for recording the video and audio. But I think that Skype is okay, and I think it can work. It doesn't seem to have quite as much flexibility in terms of switching between multiple cameras. You can do it, but I think it's more like going into the preferences, if I remember correctly. So it's not necessarily built up for multicam, but there are kind of some workarounds to make that work. So Skype's okay. I think the challenge that's most important to understand about any of these technologies is that these online, internet calling and conferencing apps is that they're going to be kind of the limiting factor as far as quality of the audio and video is going to be the biggest thing. So you can put a $3,600 Neumann U87 in front of yourself and, have all the technology to make that work and stream that to your computer. But if you're going over Skype, you're still going to sometimes get that robotic sound, and that's a couple of things. So number one, it's the speed of your internet, and it's going to be on both sides if you're doing a lesson, but it's also latency, and I think a lot of people don't realize there are actually two factors there. So speed is the amount of throughput you can do, but latency is the amount of time it generally takes when you send a request and get a response over the network, and that can different types of internet connections can have different latencies. And that can change from time to time depending on what else is going on the network, so on and so forth. So when we lived in Tucson, do you remember our internet there?
A little bit.
It was so we lived down in the desert, and we moved into a new neighborhood. We built a new home, and we moved into this neighborhood. And for reasons that nobody understands, they ran to the kind of the hub of the development. They had fiber.
And they advertised it as fiber optic internet. I remember that.
Yeah. But what the reality was at the time, there was no fiber to the home. So all there was DSL, and they didn't run cable to that neighborhood as well. So it was out on the edge of town. So we had no option. We had no DSL option. We had no cable option. And this was back in like 2001. So it's a while ago. And the only option there was this wireless option. And it was actually pretty fast. Like when you started to download, once it started, it was really fast. But there was a ton of latency. And so when voice over IP and internet calling became a thing, I remember testing that and just shaking my head in frustration. And that was because that particular type of internet, while it was fast in terms of overall throughput, the latency was super high. So one thing you might want to check is if you are going to do these online lessons, go to speedtest.net and just have your internet, just let that kind of assess the quality of your internet, and that'll give you both the throughput and the latency, so you'll get a sense for how things are looking there, and maybe you can work with your provider to see if there are any options if you are experiencing issues there. So those are some thoughts. All right, let's go back. Emma, any other thoughts on remote lessons or on online learning?
Sorry. I don't know how the online lessons are going to be, because this will be my first time, since I started college, that's the biggest deep digging into trumpet playing and music I've done. So it'll be an interesting experience doing that online. The rest of online learning is fine. Thank you.
Okay. And then Danny, any other thoughts from your point of view?
I would say give it a couple of tries and be willing to experiment and be creative, a little creative, both in terms of how you teach and in terms of what you use to do it. So if you don't like how a particular app works, go in there and fiddle with it a little bit. I think your suggestions on knowing what you're starting with in terms of what's my internet connection like and what's the latency like, I think that will help a lot.
Okay. Cool. So let's, Emma, if you are welcome to stay and hang out with this cool crowd that's online here, or you're welcome to go work on your studies if you need to.
I already did that today.
Emma's home from university because they all went online, as we mentioned earlier. So,
yeah.
Okay, cool. So the next thing I want to talk about, one thing I did talk about earlier is that you can put a really good microphone in front of yourself, but you're still going to be potentially limited by the service that you're using. So, But I do think that after you have some way to mount whatever you're going to use. So, by the way, you can, of course, use your built-in webcam. That is totally legitimate. The built-in microphone on most computers is pretty mediocre. It's going to pick up a lot. Like if you're in a room with a lot of reverberation, it's going to pick all that up. And I think that when you're teaching lessons, that could become a bit of a problem. I think it's going to be a little more difficult to assess tone and things of that nature if you have all this reverb going on as well.
Right. And if there's a lot of stuff going on in the room, so it's pretty important that the student has a place that's relatively quiet. And with some of the younger children, they might need a parent there with them to help keep them on track, and also maybe to help keep the room in control.
Okay. So I actually think that after you have a stand, one of the other things to consider is a microphone as well. And the
Sounds
reason I say
reasonable.
that is because the webcams usually have a built-in microphone. They're not very directional. They're usually a little bit farther away, so they sound farther away, which means they're going to pick up more room sound as well. And as opposed to the, your instrument and your voice, that can be a little bit of a challenge. So I think that a USB microphone can be a useful thing. Now there's a trade-off as well. So for example, we are actually working on a review of the Rode NT USB Mini, this little microphone here. Kind of a cool little microphone, $99, really solid build, connects via USB to your computer. Impressive sound for the price. It's a condenser microphone, so it's very, very sensitive. And that can work pretty well. The challenge with that is that when you have a separate microphone from your camera, you will start to get some drift. So things may be a little bit out of sync. Now, if I'm using my inbuilt webcam on my iMac here and this, there wasn't that much. It was actually, I think, okay. But it can start to get really, really distracting if you're using something that does have a lot of latency. Like if you're connecting up a camera and feeding that via HDMI to some capture card into your computer, and then you have a separate microphone going somewhere else. So my thinking is that for teaching music lessons, at least, that a USB mic, something like this, can be okay with your webcam. If you are going to use an external camera, you want a higher quality image for whatever reason, and you're going to hook up a camera and then feed the HDMI feed into what's called a capture card, and that goes via USB into your computer, and your computer then sees it as a webcam. You can do that, but if you're going to use a separate microphone, I actually, for the purposes of music lessons, I would connect the microphone to the camera so you avoid those sync issues, and then take the audio from the camera for the Skype call or the FaceTime or the Zoom meeting or whatever you're using. That way you're not going to have those sync issues. And I think that's especially critical, obviously, for music, because we're talking about tempo is very important. And if you have this distraction of the sound is arriving at a different time than the visuals, you're just going to drive people crazy.
Yeah, I think that would cause the teacher a lot of stress.
So, and we'll talk more about the kind of those more sophisticated setups in a little bit later. All right, is there anything else that we have not covered yet?
I'll think of it when we're done.
When we're done, of course.
Nothing obvious comes to mind right now.
Okay. So the next thing that I want to talk about is you actually have, so we've done some live streaming on this channel here and also on my Curtis Jet Audio, my second channel as well. But you are getting ready to do your own first live stream.
Yes.
Tell us about that and what that one's all about.
In about 3 weeks, I'm going to be presenting a fiddle workshop. We're going to learn some Scottish tunes, and I am also heading up organizing what's called a Fiddler's Rally for Highland Games in June. I am not sure of the status of that event yet, and I don't think anybody is. However, we are going to go ahead with the workshop. I thought about it and decided, well, let's just do a virtual workshop. And it will be different than a live workshop because we won't be able to play the tunes together, obviously, but I'm going to structure it so that people will still have a little bit of call and response, where I will play a phrase in order to teach a tune. The music that we're going to play is pretty short, usually 32 bars of music. So it's like a minute and a half's worth of music. Mm-hmm. So I'll play, to teach those kind of tunes, typically what we do is we'll play like a couple of bars and we'll get those down and then we'll add a couple more and a couple more. So I think it would be pretty straightforward for the instructor to play 4 bars and then have the students do that a couple times. And of course, the instructor will keep playing. There will be, I'm going to use a platform. I haven't decided exactly which one yet, but I have some in mind, where people can ask questions. They'll type them in, kind of how we're doing here.
Right.
And so there will be some feedback available that way. And then I'm also going to provide sheet music at the end as well as recordings of what we're doing. So that's the plan so far.
Okay. So our thinking at this point is probably YouTube will be the streaming platform.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And when you do stream to something like YouTube or Facebook or, there are a whole bunch of others, Twitch, so on and so forth, You do have to have an app of some sort. So what are your plans there?
I'm going to ask you. No, I think we talked about, are you talking about things like, I don't even remember, Ecamm Live and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so let's cover those.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch over again to the screen here, the Mac. So OBS Studio is the most popular of the streaming apps. And so essentially what this does is OBS Studio is an application that runs on your computer. It captures the video from your camera, whether that's your webcam or a separate camera you've hooked up to your computer via a capture card, or and also any microphones you have connected, either via the camera or directly to the computer. So you can combine all of those, and this sends that feed over to the streaming, the service like YouTube, Facebook, so on and so forth. So that's basically what this type of application does. There's a Windows, Mac, and Linux versions of OBS Studio. I believe it's free.
It says open source.
Yeah, it's open source. So there's no
free and open source.
Free and open source software for video recording and live streaming. So you can do a couple things. You can also incidentally record a version of your live stream on your local computer as well, which is a cool feature. And it also gives you the ability to set up all sorts of things like transitions. If you're going to be switching between cameras, you can do that. If you're going to switch to your screen on your computer and then back to your camera, or maybe use a picture-in-picture of you in the, from your camera in the lower left corner, and then your screen, so on and so forth. So you can do a lot of stuff with this, and that's probably the most popular option. I think it seems that a lot of gamers, for example, use this for their streaming, and I don't know because I haven't used the Windows version. Back when I used the Mac version a couple of years ago, there were a couple of rough edges, I'll have to confess, and so I didn't end up using it long term. But it is certainly an option. And if you feel like you're more of a DIY kind of person, or someone that loves to dig into software and really kind of figure out how it works and so on and so forth, OBS is very powerful and can do a lot of really cool things. Tonight, however, we are using what's called Ecamm Live. And there are a few things that I like about Ecamm Live. Ecamm Live is a little simpler to use. It can do basically, from my experience, all the things that OBS can do. However, it is a subscription model, so you do pay for this one. So it's $12 a month for this if you do a yearly, $15 a month if you go on a month-to-month basis, and you can also move up to Pro. I'm just using the standard version here, and the reason I pay for this is a couple of things. Number one of the things I really like about it, and this may be a little silly, but you saw earlier when Lloyd had a comment. We'll just put one of Lloyd's comments up there. This integrates with YouTube very nicely. So there's a YouTube chat during the live stream, and I can put anyone's comments up on the screen really quickly. So it looks pretty nice, and it just kind of ties you to your audience a little bit better. So if you are doing that streaming thing, this is a really kind of cool feature that makes this a lot nicer. So that's one of the reasons I use Ecamm Live. But there are some other reasons as well. It seems to work really well with most of the hardware I've used. So I'm going to switch actually back over to camera number 3 here. This is our overhead camera. You can see our messy setup here. So we are using tonight, our capture card is actually a switcher called the Blackmagic A10 Mini. Now, we're moving into the more complex stuff. So I just want to make it clear for those of you that want to teach music lessons, I'd keep it simple. Don't dive into all this stuff at first. But if you are looking to kind of improve the broadcast feel of your live stream, then you can start to move into these types of things up here as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about those. So those are the main 2 apps with which I'm familiar. There are others out there as well, but Ecamm Live is the one I use. OBS is probably the most popular one out there. So just wanted you to be aware of those. So again, this is if you're going to stream to a service from your computer like YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, so on and so forth. All right. Coming back to our cameras here. Let's go to, let's go to that one. And then, all right, let's go to the questions here and just see what we've got going on. We have a whole bunch of items here. Slav Guns, Curtis, can you recommend let's put it up on the screen. Can you recommend a mic I can use to report from the front lines of a zombie apocalypse? Yeah. I just want to be clear that I don't actually believe we're at the zombie apocalypse now. We have a pandemic going, no doubt, but I haven't seen any zombies yet, so I think we're safe on that front. But reporter microphones would be a really good one, I think. So good luck with that. I hope you stay safe out there.
The only zombies are the students, who have no reason to go get coffee anymore. So they're just tired now.
They're just tired. Okay, I see. All right. We have a question: Electrosonics PDR versus Sennheiser AVX. I think those are two very separate things. So not necessarily related to, definitely not related to live streaming on the Electrosonics side. So Electrosonics is a body pack recorder. Sennheiser AVX is a wireless microphone system. So I think it really depends what you want. Electrosonics PDR, you can't live stream with that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Sennheiser AVX, you could. So I guess it depends on, do you want wireless or do you want to do the sync in post? Those are the two things. In terms of quality, they both produce great audio quality. In fact, Electrosonics just came out with a new one. I don't think it's called the PDR anymore. It's called the something time code recorder. So there's a kind of a long history there with the PDR. I won't go into the whole thing, but in any case, that's just been replaced here. Mark says, following up from that, what recorder would you recommend for run and gun documenting the inevitable collapse of humans? People, let's keep it on the up and up here. I mean, you got to be prepared. I get it, but let's also be a little bit positive. I appreciate. I don't know, Mark, you're just joking, but I would probably say I'd go with the sound devices. They're pretty rugged, so maybe one of the mixed pre's would be a good choice there. All right, have you guys used the Comica WM300A?
No.
What's that?
Oh, they haven't.
Sorry.
I have not either. There's a long story there, Jerry, but the short version is I haven't been reviewing Comica products because I had kind of an issue with some of the things they did as a company with me individually. So long story, but in any case, I have not looked at that. Bill, welcome. Got people coming in saying, hey, waving. Hello from Wisconsin, Kenny. Thanks for joining us. Charles, appreciate your live session so much. Are you still planning to record the mix minus tutorial? Yes, absolutely. That's on my list. It's pretty high on the list. I've got a few other commitments I have to take care of first, but yeah, we'll definitely get to that so you can use your mix pre for doing those over the air or I guess online recording sessions. So definitely. Hi, hello, Will. It's good to hear from you. Hope everything's going okay. And hello to Lloyd. Thanks for joining us. Thunder's Boom brought up a couple things. So, Zoomer Clean Feed. I've heard of Clean Feed.
Yes.
I haven't heard of Zoomer. Anyway, there is another service that we should talk about, Clean Feed. And Clean Feed I have not used for live streaming, but I have used for recording online podcasts. So when I needed to bring in a remote guest, Clean Feed worked very nicely. You have to use, I think it works in certain browsers, but not all browsers. So it works in Chrome. I believe it relies on Chrome, in fact. So over the Chrome browser, you can send very high quality audio. So
Opera works also.
Opera does also work. That's
Yes.
right. That's right. You used Opera that night, didn't
Yes.
you, when we did our test? Okay. Good to know. For those of you that are, a little bit more nerdy and like to use browsers like Opera.
Or don't want to use Chrome.
or don't want to use Chrome. Fair point. Okay. But that if you don't have to have visuals, and actually I don't remember if you can do visuals at the same time or not, but I don't think via Clean Feed itself you can. But the nice thing about Clean Feed is the audio quality is so much better than Zoom or Skype or any of those others. So if there's a way that fits into your particular workflow, that doing a one-on-one with another person, a lesson or something, I'm having a hard time imagining doing a lesson without visuals.
People do it.
Do they?
Some people have done lessons over the phone, just audio only.
Okay.
So it's possible.
It's possible. So there'll be some challenges and some things you kind of give up, but Clean Feed is a really good service for that. And if you're just doing two people, I believe it's free. So that is another one to look into. And the audio quality is much higher. So definitely something to look into. It is, Charles, questions are totally good. Yes, we got a lot of questions. People asked about this one a whole bunch. So TV2 US, saludos desde Mexico City. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you can afford the Electrosonics, then I don't think you'll be disappointed. I agree. That's true. It has become obvious this is Curtis's family, so my fears of them not distancing have been allayed. Yes,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Yes, thank you.
you.
Yeah,
Yes,
we're
that's
okay.
good.
This is we've been sequestered now. Emma, you've moved from university when?
A week
ago.
ago. But I was home for spring break. We just got all my stuff back a week ago.
Right, so we've basically been here for a couple of weeks now.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes. So that's so far so good here. So, all right. Love your videos. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. For maximum sound quality, I would go with something like Clean Feed, Source Connect, or Clean Feed or Source Connect Now. Yes. So Source Connect Now is, I think, a very popular one amongst voiceover artists when they're doing remote sessions. So that's definitely, I just learned about that one just recently. So something to consider as well. All right, this is one that Lloyd came up with earlier. So when you're doing those lessons, the student really should have a metronome on hand. So the music teachers out there, definitely keep that in mind. You may need to require your students to have that metronome available. That will really help things along. And then Thunderboom, I agree. Because of internet delay, they would definitely want to use a metronome on their side and not the other person's side.
Right. So if the teacher's like, I need you to play this scale at 60 beats per minute, and the teacher had the metronome on, it would be a disaster because it would be very frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then, okay, Thunderboom says Zoom is one of my favorite pieces of software for this kind of thing and a platform. So yeah, we're gonna learn more about that here pretty soon.
We are.
And then Lloyd says dance is much harder to do. I would probably agree.
It is.
Yeah. Hello from Bangkok. Thanks for joining us. Zoom seems good for scheduling too. Another good point there, that if you do have to, the thing about Zoom is it's really made for conferencing. And so it has a lot of additional features in it. Skype was very much made as a voice over IP, calling app. But whereas Zoom seems much more of a conferencing thing. And so it has a lot of other additional features there that are worth looking at. All right. So what is streaming service for this live topic? How about setup? All right. Let me just, so we've talked about a little bit of that. You probably asked this before we covered some of that, but let me just run through a few things here. We'll switch to our overhead camera. So what you can see here, I have a Sound Devices Mix Pre. So we have our 3 microphones coming in over here. Incidentally, we're also using auto mix so that when I'm talking, your microphones are attenuated, so they're not hearing you guys unless you breathe really heavily into the mic. Oh, that's gross. That is really bad. And then when multiple people are talking at the same time, everyone gets attenuated so that the overall level is maintained and not it doesn't clip. So that's one thing. And then you can see here, there's an output here. This is running into this camera, right, that you're seeing right here. So the audio is running from the Mix Pre, from all of us, into this camera right here. And then that camera, as well as this camera, as well as this camera, all of those run into this right here. That's the Blackmagic A10 Mini. So those are the 3 cameras coming in here. I also have a monitor that we're watching on the desktop, so we just have a preview monitor up on the desk. I don't really have a way to show that, but that's what this HDMI output is. This is USB-C that goes into the computer, and this is just the power to power this device. But this USB-C sends a stream to the computer so that the computer sees the signal that's coming out of the Blackmagic A10 Mini as a simple webcam, a USB webcam.
Wow, all that as a webcam.
All that as a webcam. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. That's the nice thing about a device like this. Is if you are going to do multi-camera and you want to be able to have the tactile buttons to be able to switch between them, this is a really good way to go. And it's actually, it's a little sound expensive in some contexts. It's $300 US, but that's actually really cheap for a switcher. Broadcast switchers are often much more expensive. Now, granted, this is more for kind of YouTubing and stuff like that, but in any case, all that goes into the computer. Then, once we get into the computer, we're going to go right here. It doesn't show it. You can't see it on screen because it's hiding itself, but I am actually running the Ecamm Live app. And this app, then what you do is from the Ecamm Live app, you log into your YouTube account or your Facebook account, Periscope, Twitch. It supports some others as well, Restream.io and Switchboard. And then what it does is it sends a stream from your app over the internet to that service. And so it streams live that way. So that's the overall kind of setup and idea of how this all works. And the nice thing here is, again, because we have a switcher here, so we can go between multiple cameras. So hopefully, I feel like I'm not a very good director with a switcher just yet. Like I'm a little twitchy on it. So anyway, that's the overall setup. All right, back to Thunderboom. The cool thing about CleanFeed is that any device can access the web can use it as long as you're using Safari, Firefox, or Chrome. Actually, Thunderboom, double check that. I believe it's only Chrome that it supports because there were some specific technologies in Chrome that it needed.
And Opera.
And Opera, right?
I got it to work in Safari, I think.
Well, that's interesting
Did
because I don't think so, because I tried it on Safari, CleanFeed on Safari, and it said, no, you need to use Chrome.
Oh.
Okay, so
I don't know. Maybe I followed a bum link, but I did open it in Safari.
And it worked?
I think so.
Well, everybody double check that. If you're going to use it, test first. Definitely test first. And one suggestion that people had was, if you can, test with a person that's not in the same house on a different computer, because some of the services will actually optimize the network, which makes sense if you're going to be in two different places in the same house on the same network. That's one thing, but someone else out on the internet, that's going to test it's going to test the service better and see what kind of experience you're going to have in the end. So, okay. Max says the Zoom Q2N is a great USB mic and webcam. There you go. That's a good one. I haven't tried that one yet, so thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that, Max. There's also Streamlabs OBS. It's better for streams. Okay, good to know. Thank you for sharing that as well. And yes, OBS is free. Jamie also says, Jamie has a Zoom Q2N and can vouch for that. Fantastic sound capture of my violin. Okay, excellent. We have another violinist here.
Yeah, all right. Good.
You guys, do you need to connect or say anything? Is there some secret wave for fiddlers? And
We should come up with one right now, but my mind escapes me.
Okay, all right. Cool. All right. A relatively low-cost hardware option is the Blackmagic A10 Mini, and in fact, that is exactly what we're using tonight. Here, Lloyd beat me to that. Streamlabs OBA is not the same version as OBS, but still free. I assume that probably had some autocorrect going on there. Streamlabs, I assume it is OBS. All right. Tyler says, well, that's nifty. Okay. A live stream for a coronavirus respite with your whole family. Hope you're okay. You sound different. I do. Oh, yeah. So I am okay. I have all the snow melted. Weather warmed up.
Stuff started growing.
And I got my seasonal allergies, and my sinuses are a little bit stressed, but other than that, we're doing okay. Many use Discord and Streamlabs OBS together. Good. All right. Steve Brent says, sure, SM58.
Yes.
Yes.
It's on the 58 tonight.
It looks like Emma.
You are.
I don't even know that. But yes, that's the musician's friend, is it not?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Brent says, cheap and durable. That's true.
It's the hammer mic.
I know. I've pounded in nails with that thing.
You have?
No, not really.
Bruh.
But there are venues where they have. Bill also talks about the MKH416. That is a good... that's a good recommendation. I do sound different indeed. We have that confirmed. We have a recommendation there for a shotgun mic. All right. What's your opinion on Wirecast, if any? I don't have an opinion on Wirecast. If anyone else does, I'd be interested to hear what that's all about and what your experience has been. I bought a brand new Keep Cup for coffee a week ago. Now the university is closed.
Things happen like that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
We woke up yesterday morning by an earthquake. So
that was fun.
we're
That was
sheltering
really
in
fun.
place, and then there was an earthquake. So, there you go.
Yeah. Things have been exciting for us. So here's a little story for you. Yeah, so we did wake up to an earthquake. So we live outside of Park City, Utah. So up in the mountains, 25, 30 miles from Salt Lake City.
30,
30
yes.
miles.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a earthquake on the west side, the opposite side of Salt Lake yesterday, a 5.3,
Something like that.
5 point
5
something.
point
Yeah.
something.
Did some damage. The LDS temple, the angel on top lost his trumpet, and
But there were
neighbors.
some people
Oh,
in that
yeah,
area
yeah.
whose homes,
Yep.
stuff fell all over
Yeah.
and there were bricks falling. And
Yep,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
I have friends that live in Sugar House, one of the suburbs of Salt Lake, and they had picture hangings fall off the wall and break. Their neighbors had bricks falling from their chimneys. So yeah, there was some damage for sure. We didn't get it as hard here, but it woke us up. We were enjoying the fact that we didn't have to get up quite as early, which is a nice thing about this whole situation. And so 7:08, we kind of start shaking, and so we all run to the doorways of our room. It's like, what?
I didn't. I slept right through it.
You didn't feel? Did you feel it?
Yes, I felt it, but I didn't run to the doorway like I should have.
Okay.
And then I heard you say something, and then I
Right.
picked up my phone and looked it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, but then we had some excitement too. We have a well for our water source here, and with the earthquake, we don't know, but the combination of that and maybe springtime, our water turned a different color than it should have been.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then we spent the better part of the day trying to get that solved, and we did. It was no problem. It turns out that that's not an unusual thing in the springtime. So you just have to flush the systems, which is what we did. So we're back to normal. Everything's okay. We're going to survive. Here's a question: 633 versus 833. What do you ladies think?
I assume this refers to a sound device as something.
Recorder, yeah.
I don't know.
Which
I don't
one?
know either.
Okay.
I think they're probably both good. It
Yeah.
probably depends on if you want to be on the bleeding edge or how much you want to spend on it, I would guess.
That's part of it. Yep. So it depends on what you're trying to do. Yeah, I think you can still get great audio with 633. I've still got my 633. Great recorder. The 833 is nicer from the standpoint that so you have 3 mic line inputs on the 633 and then 3 line inputs in addition to the 3 mic line inputs. On the 833, they're all mic line switchable. So that's a nice addition there if you need that. 833 is going to last you long. It's going to be serviceable longer than the 633, probably, I would guess. So if you're buying for the long term, that probably makes some sense for the 833 there. If you can get the 633 for a great price, though, you're buying used, then that's a great recorder. And I still have mine, and I'm not giving it up anytime soon. So there's some pluses and minuses there. We also have a dedicated video on the 833 if you want to go look at that kind of talks about some of those things in more detail. So I've tried Facebook Live with the Zoom H1N. The audio quality on the student end is bad, but I know the H1N is good. Is there a way to control Facebook Live transmission parameters? That I don't know. I've only done Facebook Live one time. That was back when Aperture was doing Facebook Live, and they brought me on, and we just did a question and answer session. I don't know if I even went and go see that. I did it from my phone, actually, in that case, with an external microphone connected to the phone. So I had a dynamic microphone connected to the Rode IXLR, I think it's called. So you can plug on an XLR microphone, and then it runs Lightning into your phone, an iOS device. And that's actually how I did the live stream. But certainly on the app, I didn't see any transmission parameters that you could set there. Others might know more about that. If you're using on your computer, for example, an app like Ecamm or OBS, there are some parameters you can set to kind of dial in the resolution and the quality that you're going to send. So you do have some options there, Bill, if you're looking there.
If one thing that people mentioned, or that was mentioned at that webinar today, was that if you're using the Zoom app, so the kind of the web conferencing thing, it will compress the audio by default, and if you turn that off, you can get better sound quality for the instruments.
Okay. So
I don't know if that applies to Facebook, but that might be something to check.
Okay. So that's a good point. And you have to have the internet bandwidth and
Yes.
low latency to support that as well.
Yes.
So, okay. But definitely something to check out. If anyone else knows down below, please leave that in the comments. All right. La Rana Nation, thanks for joining us. Tyler, when would it be smart to choose a short shotgun mic versus a large diaphragm condenser mic for live streaming, podcasting, recording indoors, etc.? I think they can both. I think what I would do is focus more on finding a mic that works well with your voice. That would be my number one priority. And there's a reason why a lot of voiceover artists use a Sennheiser MKH416, a shotgun microphone, which is kind of funny. They're in a sound booth using this enormously directional microphone from about 6 inches away, which is kind of funny. But the reason they use it is because it sounds really good with their voices, and it's a good sound. So I wouldn't be quite well. And I guess one advantage of using a shotgun microphone is it's more directional. So if you have a space that's maybe not quite as treated, you might get better results that way. But I don't know. That's a tough one. But again, I would generally, my focus would probably be on getting something that works well with your voice. And that's a tricky one. But there are some pro audio shops that'll let you go and sample their microphones, actually record into them and listen back. Guitar Center here in the United States, for example, you can potentially do that, although not right now. But but once we're back to kind of a more normal lifestyle, once the pandemic is settled, then you can do some things like that. All right, Al is using vMix into Zoom to add production value. Audio can be dicey, though, trying to learn voice meter. Any thoughts? I don't have any firsthand experience. Do you?
I don't.
I don't know what voice meter is.
Not familiar. Okay. We thought we'd try, but if others in the group here, or, I believe vMix is a streaming app, much like OBS, so on and so forth. So the vMix app would give you a lot more control, I would think. Don't know anything about voice meter, but I will take a look at that and see what I can find out here. Al, thanks for the question. And if anyone has anything they can share, by all means do. Do you have any recommendations of ear pads for the Sony MDR 7506? I actually use the, what are they called? Give me just a moment here. I'll look those up. I bought them from B&H. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at my orders because that's not showing on the screen right now. Okay, we're good. I want to just show you, what are they called? I bought them not that terribly long. Here we go. I'll switch you over here. I'm using these Garfield headphone softies. So they're ear pad covers. They're not actually replacing the ear pads. They're just the covers over the ear pads. They're actually made out of rayon. But those have made it so the nice thing about it is that your ears don't get too hot when it's really hot, and they don't get too cold when it's really cold. So they've been really nice. They work well for me. Not everyone loves them, but they've been working nicely. It really depends on the shape of your ears, because the MDR 7506s are actually, they call them circumoral headphones, but it depends on the size of your ear as to whether or not they actually go around your ear or they sit on your ears. So, and once you put a cover like this on them, then they become more like on-ear headphones in some ways. So that's my experience with those there. So hopefully that's helpful for you a little bit. All right. You just love those sound devices recorders, don't you, Curtis? I do. I will confess. I don't have anything against these Axcom recorders either. I'd love to have one of those. Any objections?
No. When we visited that pretty cool audio place, there were some
that
nice
was fun.
things.
Okay,
yeah.
I didn't think I would enjoy true audio, but I did.
Yes.
It was very interesting.
Even though I was so focused on other things on that trip, I really liked that. That was really cool.
Well, you guys are really good sports. They came to True Audio with me. True Audio, for those that aren't familiar with it, is a pro audio shop serving Hollywood, basically. They're in Burbank, right next to Hollywood, and a lot of the production sound mixers come in there for their gear purchases and rentals and repair and so on and so forth. And so they were both I was looking for a sound card at the time. They were both very good sports. Came and hung out at the store for a good 45 minutes at least.
We won't mention what store I made y'all wait at for 2
well,
hours.
Good point. Actually, we will.
No, we won't.
No, anyway, so we had a good time there. That was a lot of... All right. Hey, hope you are well. When recording dialogue live on a shoot outdoors, I also want to record ambiance using a Zoom H1. But do I record the ambiance separately since it'll pick up dialogue?
Yes.
I don't know, but probably.
I'm guessing yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so I would record it separately because then you give the post team more options to work with. If you record it at the same time as a dialogue, then you're going to have phasing issues, and they're going to have to kind of clean that up and to make it work because you're recording with a dialogue mic plus the Zoom H1n trying to record ambiance at the same time. So I think you want to do those separately under most circumstances. So that's a good question. Thanks for asking that. All right. You might have to use something separate for visual style, visual slow. I apologize. I'm not sure what that means, but thanks for all the input here. I don't think YouTube, Facebook Live is really what people are looking for to teach music lessons. I agree. No, that's a different type of thing. So what Danny was talking about with the Fiddlers Rally is more of it was supposed to be an in-person workshop, right?
That's right. So it's more like a presentation than a lesson.
Right. Yeah, so you're not going to be able to hear back the audience, the students.
No.
Okay.
Not with that setup.
Yeah, so that very definitely a different thing.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Jamie. That's a good point. Is WYSICOM better than Electrosonics? I don't know. I mean, that's a little bit like asking if Lamborghini is better than Ferrari, and I'm not sure if there's a definitive answer to that. They're both actually quite good products. So, all right. Gerald just purchased a Samson CO2 mic set to use with my Tascam DR60D Mark II. I purchased a month or so ago. For the money, it sounds great. Thanks for the reviews on these products. That's great to hear, Gerald. Thanks so much for feeding that back to us so that we know that's working out for people. Brent, I led an online animation class with Zoom, used a Samsung Q2U over USB and a Sony A5100 capture card, and it worked really well. The Sony Cam was really cheap, and I got it after watching Curtis's review. Wow, that was a while back, Brent. So that was actually, Danny, that was your camera.
Oh, yeah, that's
Sony,
right.
yeah.
That's right.
So
I think, yeah. And that's lent out to somebody else right now.
Yeah,
So.
it's on its third or fourth life. Well, not its third or fourth life, just third or fourth owner, I guess.
It does take nice pictures.
It does.
There's a few things to kind of.
It's quirky.
Yeah, it is a little quirky. Yeah.
But it does have good imaging, so that's important. So yeah, Brent, that's great news. So a combination there: Samsung Q2U, Zoom, animation class. That's cool. So you had a multicam setup. That is a nice setup there. All right. Thunderboom, the Safari support is recent. Oh, that's good news. Okay. Safari and Chrome both worked for me. Excellent.
I thought so, yeah.
Okay, so thanks for calling me out on that, Emma.
That's
Appreciate
fine.
that.
It was a mistake, honestly, so. I don't know.
Cool. All right, Sean, hi to the Judd family. Stay healthy, and thanks for participating.
I like live streaming a lot.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
Yes. And you all stay healthy too.
Yeah, everybody stays healthy. That is true. Okay. Quantum Sound Productions, I find vMix to be very user-friendly and reasonably priced. Excellent. So that's another streaming app that's available out there for those that are not familiar with that. All right, Kylo. So the coronavirus is good for something. I'm finally awake to catch a live stream when it's happening. Hello from Norway, where it's almost 4 a.m. Wow, you are an early riser.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us. It's so early in the morning, your time. Lee is a Wirecast user. Okay, very good. Aloha from Archie. Thank you, Archie. We are not in Provo. No, we're up near Park City, so we're up in the mountains up here. All right. Thanks for the knowledge, and thanks for everyone else that's sharing there. This is a community here, so thanks for everyone that's sharing. It's okay so far. Currently, I'm trying to work out why streaming 1080p uses up 95% CPU and can't run in YouTube. Have to use 480. Any difference in efficiency by software in your experience? That is a good question. What I can tell you is that I do notice a difference from the actual live stream. So those of you that are watching this while this is live, I think that the stream that you see is actually not quite as good as the one that actually gets posted. So what happens is that as you stream, YouTube is saving it off to disk, and they'll go back and kind of, it does some sort of processing, and it makes it look nicer. So when people are watching it back after the fact, it actually looks better, has been my experience. So I've actually had pretty good luck with this Blackmagic A10 Mini. It does decent 1080p, and I think that partly depends on your network connection. I'm not 100% sure on that. Now the 95% CPU, that's a lot of CPU. And I know, like if I look at activity monitor here let's see how much of our CPU we're running right now, just out of curiosity. Let's see if we can share that. Okay, here's our CPU right now. So we're hardly doing anything. Now, well, that's not fair necessarily. I have to disclose. So first of all, this is a 10-core iMac Pro. So maybe that's not a great fair comparison.
No.
The ladies are shaking their heads saying no. Quit showing off is basically what they're saying.
No,
So
it's fine.
it's fine.
We should do this on, I don't know.
You're
My-
really old.
My
laptop.
iMac, yeah.
So that's something to look into. 95% CPU. I mean, I don't know which capture card you're using, what kind of computer you're using, but I think that the software may actually make a difference in terms of efficiency there. So I don't know if you're using OBS at this point, but those are all things to look into there and see if you can. There's a trial version. If you are on a Mac, there's a trial version of Ecamm that you can use for a couple weeks to kind of test it out and see if it works more efficiently. So I would definitely check that out if you can. All right. I've slept through earthquakes also. Never knew about it until the report the next day. It woke others up and caused chimney damage as well. Wow.
Yep.
Nick, be careful out there.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
People's piles of toilet paper rolls probably toppled over during the earthquake. There were some memes that suggested that kind of poked fun at that.
At least it's soft.
At least it is
At
soft.
least it's soft.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. Okay. All right. Keith, how did the ladies feel about the Zoom H4n?
Man, I'm still back on the H2. Get back with me a little later.
I still record with my iPhone, so I don't know.
Not sure. Okay. Well,
I'm not on the bleeding edge.
Yeah.
okay. Keith, I think that from my perspective, it's, for $200, it's a decent option. I think it works better with condenser microphones than it will with dynamic microphones, but if you're just running condensers, it's a pretty decent option. So there's some thoughts there. Carlos, hello from Rio. Thanks for joining us. All right, we have a super chat. Thank you, LOL. Thank you for all you do, Curtis. You've helped me a ton over the years make great purchase decisions and technical know-how. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. So thanks for sharing that with us, and thanks for the bright YouTube name. It keeps things light during the time when it's kind of stressful. So
Yeah.
hope you're doing well. Thank you. So here's an interesting one. Larko says, I prefer dynamic microphones for live streaming and podcasting. Do you guys have any preferences?
I haven't done enough of either to have an opinion.
Okay, so you're using a dynamic tonight. You're using a dynamic. We're all on dynamic mics tonight.
Yeah.
All right. I actually have some thoughts on that. And I think that's a good point you bring up, Larko. I actually think that dynamic microphones for a lot of people are probably a good choice when it comes to live streaming and podcasting, because a lot of us are working in spaces that are not acoustically treated. In this case, we're just really close. There would be a lot more microphone bleed if we were using condensers in this case. And so that's part of the reason we're using dynamics here tonight. But I think that a lot of people that are recording in spaces that are not acoustically treated, I think they're going to be better off with dynamic microphones in a lot of cases. So I actually pretty much agree with that sentiment. It's not 100% of the time. There are cases where condenser microphone tends to be more sensitive in the higher frequencies, and so you get a more probably a more accurate, not necessarily more accurate, but potentially more accurate overall representation of a person's voice. And I think that's generally why most voiceover artists use it. They're very articulate, they're very clean, but it can be a challenge when you're in situations like this. Like this or in untreated spaces. So, all right, worth it or not. Hello, thanks for joining us. Joseph, when do you think 32-bit float recording will be adopted by every company? Well, it's one of those things that's interesting. It's just like high dynamic range. The entire pipeline has to support it. And the trick right now is that cameras certainly don't support it. They don't support dynamic range that wide. So that's going to be a limiting factor. But I think it's interesting that Sound Devices announced and started shipping their Mix Pre 2 series. Zoom started shipping their Zoom F6 All of those 32-bit float capable wide dynamic range recorders, and at the same time, Sound Devices released their new Pro level recorders without 32-bit float, which is interesting. So I can't say exactly why that is, but I think my take on it is that 32-bit float recording has its place. I think there are some cases where it makes a lot of sense. If you're a solo operator, it definitely makes sense so that you've got your hands doing a whole bunch, and your brain is engaged doing a whole bunch of things. And sometimes you might make a mistake. You might set the gain incorrectly. And 32-bit float can help you in that circumstance. So recording certain things that go from really, really quiet to really, really loud, I think 32-bit float is really useful today. Eventually, probably all the recorders will be, I would guess. But in terms of, there are certain situations today and where into the, at least the near-term foreseeable future, I don't see going to 32-bit floats because our cameras are still limited, at least on the video front. So interesting question. Thanks for that one. All right. If it only podcast with no video, there is also Wavelab license that come with the Zoom H4n. Oh, okay, for recording. Yes, thank you for that. Yes, you have a free app there that you can use as well. UK gets almost no earthquakes, so we spend 6 months filling an all-glass exterior to an office block in Warwickshire, and 3 weeks later, bang, earthquake. Ow.
Oh, no,
Oh, dear.
no.
Oh, that breaks my heart. That's rough.
Yeah.
Ouch. Okay. Voice meter is a voice over IP. Okay. And then Dante Audio. Yes, so Dante we covered a few weeks back on the channel here, which is an interesting one. And Joseph, yes, thank you for, yes, it's the softies that I use on my headphones. vMix is PC only. That is one of its drawbacks, so that's good to know as well if you're going to look at that. Not an early riser. I haven't gone to bed yet. Oh.
Oh, wow.
Hey, Kylo. I take it all back then. Dude, you need to go to bed. Go get some rest. All right, Lloyd. I suppose if a teacher has a good setup for remote teaching, they could send the mic and metronome to the student. Just don't monitor the metronome locally. Kind of a reverse mix minus. Interesting. Yeah, so that's an option there as well to help out your students there. Thanks for that. To reduce CPU, look into a hardware encoder. Okay, that's a possibility if you weren't using, if you're not using a hardware encoder, yes, you may want to look at that. How did you pipe your video into your computer before the ATEM Mini? Emma, could you actually hand me that? There's a box over there, the small cardboard black box. Yeah, that. Let me just show everybody here. So here is one option as well. This is just a single camera input. So this is called the AJA UTAP. There's an HDMI version and there's an SDI version. This will be more for the professional cameras that have SDI outputs, which look like this, the BNC connectors. So I didn't use that one quite as much except for with a cinema camera. And then this one takes an HDMI feed from your camera and then sends USB to your computer. So that's a hardware encoder, basically. A hardware. They often call them capture cards. I don't know why they call them cards because they're extra. They're boxes, but some of them go into PCs, and I guess those are cards, and that's why they call them capture cards. But that's what I used before the ATEM Mini. Blackmagic also makes one called the Mini Recorder. I had more problems with that one. I think once it worked, it was fine, but it was hard to get it working sometimes. The AJAs tended to work a little bit better, although they are more expensive than the Blackmagic version. So there's some options there. All right, give that back over this way. All right, next up, Certain Exposures. Thanks for the super chat. Giving Cam a shot. Great. Best wishes on that. Hope that can solve some of those problems for you. All right, not sure why they wouldn't apply the penny. Okay, that's fine. No worries. Totally appreciate it. Thank you. What mixing panel would you use with the MixPre 6.2 for a live feed to an internet broadcast? Motorized faders? I don't know that the MixPre 2 that supports any control surfaces that have motorized faders. I have the... Oh, which one is it? It's been a while. I did a video. So if you go on my Curtis Judd audio channel and search for MixPre control surfaces, I have a demonstration of one there. I know, Lloyd, you saw that one. I don't know if you ended up picking that one up as well, but there is some information on that one. So I apologize. I don't remember the name right off the bat. But there are some. So it does not have motorized faders, to be honest. Those that work with the MixPre 2 are some of the more budget-oriented MIDI control surfaces. So they're not, as of right now, as far as I'm aware, none of them have motorized faders. So, all right. Tyler, you had an experience with Motu devices such as the new M2 or M4, or do you prefer a Zoom device? I think you're talking about audio interfaces. The Motu, I don't have personal experience with them. I actually have a friend who did a lot of music recording with the earlier Motu devices, not the M2 or M4. This is several years ago. I don't have a preference because I just haven't used the Motus. What I'm using is I use the MixPre, but mostly as an audio interface, I'm using a Universal Audio X6. Not because I don't need a lot of audio inputs, but I also bought it so that I can eventually do surround monitoring. So those are the ones that I have the most experience with. And in the next couple of weeks here, we'll be doing a review of Audience's new audio interface, kind of a more budget-oriented audio interface called the Evo 4, I believe it is. Is it the 4?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a 4, Evo 4. So what do you think about that one so far, Emma?
Well, you said you're still on your camera.
Oh, my camera, sorry. There we go.
Here's the thing. One day last week when I was down here, I pointed at your old monitors and I said, "Can I have those?" And you said yes, but you need an audio interface. And I asked why, because I didn't know. And basically there was a whole conversation, and that's what's going to happen to that when you're done with it.
Okay. That's what she thinks of it. So she thinks it's really pretty great, I think is what she's saying.
That's right.
Your audio sound clean. Yes, that is the goal here. So we, as I mentioned before, we're using the MixPre 10 right now, the 2 version. We're not in 24. We're in 24-bit mode, not 32-bit mode, and we are using auto mix, and then that's feeding into the camera over here. So that's what you're hearing today. All right. Let's see here. Oh, Raleigh is watching from the Philippines. Thanks for joining us from the Philippines. I use a Blackmagic Ultra Studio recorder on a MacBook Air. Okay. About 2014 MacBook Air. Okay, that could be part of the challenge. I'm not positive. But that might be why it's hitting that, why it's hitting the CPU so hard there. Curtis, how did you, let's put that back up. Okay, and let's go to the things here. So on the MixPre 10, the question is, how did I get the audio from the MixPre to the camera or computer? So MixPre 10 has XLR mini outputs. So I'm sending just a mono mix out this cable into this camera. So this is a Canon C200. It has an XLR input. Prior to that, I was using a Panasonic GH5, which is what this camera is. And actually what I did is I used the 3.5 millimeter output on the other side of the MixPre via just a TRS cable, tip ring sleeve 3.5 millimeter cable into the Panasonic GH5, and that worked great as well. So that's what I'm doing now, and that's what we did in the past with the other camera. All right, any family activities, outdoor trips during these pandemic times? What are your thoughts about on all this?
Ooh.
Well, we're doing live streaming.
Yeah.
Daily walks to the mailbox.
Yeah, that's been really nice because
Yeah.
then we're not sitting at the computer doing our things all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for us, the mailbox, just to put that in context, is about 1/10 of a mile away down a dirt road. So
And there's a big hill involved.
a big hill, yeah. So it gets the heart rate up a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's no trips planned though. No, we're sticking close to home for now.
No.
So, all right, Lloyd, Launch XL. I think you're right. So was it the Launch XL is what I think you're right. That's the control surface we were using with the MixPre. So for the question earlier on that. If you were to go with wireless in-ears for your monitors, would you use what performers use for the Grammys?
Seems like that would hurt your ears. Excuse me. I watched the Grammys. I have to be honest, I don't really know how those in-ears work. But I feel like they would not be good for mixing or editing. I don't know. Do you know much about that?
I don't.
Yeah, I think that for post mixing, I definitely wouldn't want to use them. That'd just be
No.
not very uncomfortable for long
No.
term.
I can see where they would be good for stage use
Mm-hmm.
because stage monitors are really hard to work with sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can see where you would use them on stage.
Well, and especially if you're a vocalist and you need some backup directly in your ear, you don't want to be listening to those big speakers
No.
because they just shoot entirely through the room, and you can't. It's hard to get any like pitch clarity, I guess.
Interesting.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. There you have it.
Yeah.
From our esteemed panel. Thank you, esteemed panel. All right. I run a Soundcraft Signature 22 MTK, which pipes into a Linux box, and I really like it as a mixer and interface since you can record all channels individually over USB. That is nice. Very nice. Soundcraft makes some interesting mixers, as I recall. I looked at one for a while, and I think it was part of the Signature series. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that, Larko. All right, Archie, I mean the transmission and receiver unit for the in-ear monitors.
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't either.
So they're probably using, I know there are lots of manufacturers that make the different systems, so I assume they're, I think on the more budget end, you're looking probably at Sennheisers. But then, Shure makes some higher, the Audi Accent, I think it's called. I think they have, I don't know if that's just their, I don't know. That's a world I don't work in a whole lot. So Archie, I better just say I don't know because I don't. So, we'll learn more about that. But there are IFB transmitter receiver kits from a variety of different manufacturers as well. So I don't know what they were using specifically at the Grammy. So, all right. And Lloyd confirms there are no motorized or moving fader options for the Mix Pre series yet. All right. Hello from Bangkok. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. Thanks, esteemed panel.
No problem.
We try our best.
All right. We should probably wrap it up. We've been going for almost an hour and 20 minutes here. So we're going to...
Wow.
Any last words before we sign off here?
I think we should talk about what we're hopeful about in the coming months because there are so many unknowns.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Why don't you start us off?
Okay. Well, there's a lot about audio and sound and all the stuff you do, Dad, that I don't know a lot about yet. But editing videos and helping you with that stuff has been a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to, I guess, digging a lot more into that over the summer since I'll probably be at home. I was looking forward to discussing sound design of stadium concerts with you, but that'll be delayed. I don't know. And I'm also looking forward to digging into producing music more.
Good. I'm looking forward to you doing that too. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What about you, Danny?
I'm looking forward to fine-tuning the lesson setup online. I also am really interested in seeing how this workshop goes, and I'm kind of hoping that we can do some more. And maybe even if we need to do the rally as a virtual rally, that would be, obviously because of latency, that would be everybody sending their audio to me, and then I would like mix it into some humongous thing, which I think might be fun. And then I am looking forward to doing like multi-track recording and stuff that I've thought about for years and just haven't done yet.
Okay, good. It turns out we have all the gear to do that.
Yeah. So I need to get on it.
Good. And so I am thankful Emma has actually helped me. We're working on the Zoom F6 course right now. And I took 3 days off and she spent part of her spring break helping me put some of that together. We're not done yet, so we're not quite ready to launch it, but we have made some pretty good progress. So I'm happy about that. And hopefully here in the next couple of months, we'll have it all wrapped up and ready to send out there. So I think for us, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's stressful. The kind of the world situation right now is pretty stressful. It was even more like my heart rate was through the roof yesterday after the earthquake and then the water situation, the pandemic going on, so on and so forth. I was pretty stressed out, but I'm actually really grateful that we have technologies like this where we can do live streams. We can, have a good conversation with a great community here to talk about sound related things. Hopefully spreading a little hope as well. So,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks, esteemed panel.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to everybody again soon. Everybody stay well and get out there well, don't get out there, but just make some great sound in the meantime, and we'll talk to you again really soon.